Welcome to the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research's monthly public policy forum featuring a discussion on the innovation economy. We're very pleased to partner today with the Citizens Research Council, who's recently issued a report on investing in the innovation economy and how Michigan public policy ranks with some surrounding states. With that, I'd like to introduce Bob Schneider. Bob is the Senior Research Associate for State Affairs with the Citizens Research Council, having previously worked for the organization from 2013 to 2015. He has spent most of his time in state government, having worked in the Office of Health and Human Services, the State Budget Office, and as Associate Director for the nonpartisan Michigan House Fiscal Agency. Bob, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Arnold. And I'd like to offer our thanks from the Citizens Research Council to IPPSR for collaborating with us on this event. And good afternoon to everyone. I'm excited to be here with you. It's unfortunate we live in Michigan. It's winter. We can't always get together in person. It would have been great to be able to talk to you all one-on-one, but better to be safe than sorry. And with the weather, we decided to move this to a Zoom presentation. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I have a slide presentation that I'll be using. So make sure I can do this correctly. If you can see my screen's coming through, Arnold, can you just confirm that for me?
It is. Yep, you're fine.
Great. Um, So, again, pleased to be here today. Our recent report on state public policy in entrepreneurial ecosystems was released in August, and this is one of several presentations we've given around the state on the topic. And we're excited to see that this has gotten attention. Want to take time to run through the report today, and then we're going to have an excellent panel discussion afterwards with some great people talking about the innovation economy and its importance. I want to start just to talk about the Citizens Research Council quickly. I hope many of you are familiar with us. We're very proud to be celebrating our 108th year as an organization. We are a statewide, nonpartisan public policy research organization. I'm very proud to be back with the Research Council. I think we have a well-earned reputation for providing fact-based, independent, truly objective information. Our popular hashtag is facts matter, and they do matter. And that's what our goal is, to present the facts to the public when they're maybe evaluating a ballot initiative, to policymakers through our reports on various facets of state and local public policy. Again, I think we work hard to maintain that credibility that we've built over these 100+ years. We are a nonprofit. We rely heavily on charitable foundations. We get generous support from Michigan foundations. We get some support from the business community, and we lean heavily on individual donors to support our work. If you go to the website that you'll see, www.crcmich.org, if you look at the very top of the page, you'll see a button for Get Involved. Click on that, and it'll take you to a page where, if you have some room in your charitable givings, you can make a donation to support our work. Facts do matter, but as another of our slogans is, a fact tank doesn't run on fumes. So we really appreciate and need that public support. If you're able to help us, we would appreciate that. We do want to thank as well our research sponsor today, the William Davidson Foundation. They funded this project with their interest in economic development and the innovation economy. We thank all of them there for their generous support of this research. If you are interested in the slides, they will be posted online. If you go to our website and look at the top, you will see an events link. If you click on that, don't think we have the slides for today out there, but you're going to see if you're interested in seeing them right now, click events, go and look for Grand Rapids area event, click on that, and the identical slides basically will be out there if you want to follow along. And I think we will have them posted sometime soon and for today's event, and you will be able to access them there. I'm going to leave some time for questions at the end, but it'll be a limited amount of time. If afterwards you aren't able to ask a question, but you have a question on the report, on data, anything that we talk about, email me at that address, rschneider@crcmich.org. So I want to quickly move to the report. What are we going to talk about today? Economic innovation and public policy in Michigan. And our report really focuses on three questions. First, why should we care about innovation? Why is it important at all? And to the extent that it's important, is there a role for public policy to help induce and help enhance the creation of new innovation in the economy? Should we just leave the market alone to do its job there, or is there a role for government? Second, how does Michigan look as an innovation state? What are our strengths and our weaknesses? And how does state public support for innovation and entrepreneurship programming that we'll talk about during the presentation, how does that compare to some of our state neighbors? And finally, if policymakers are interested in increasing our investment, our public investment in innovation and entrepreneurship programs, where does the money maybe come from? What are some good ideas for tapping into revenue streams, both ongoing and one-time revenue streams that are available? So I'm going to jump forward now into the discussion of our report. Why should we care about innovation? Why is it important? Economists, I'm an economist by training. Economists disagree on a whole lot of stuff. When we talk about the business cycle, when we talk about the role of government in fiscal and monetary policy and stabilizing the economy, there are as many opinions as economists, probably sometimes. I will tell you one thing that economists are very largely in agreement on is long-term, not the business cycle so much, but long-term growth in the economy. What drives long-run economic growth? And the answer is human capital and technological innovation, because both of those things make workers more productive. When workers are more productive, that puts upward trends in wages and income. And when we have income and wages growing well, that means standard of living, increases with that. So if we want a prosperous society with higher standards of living, it's really economic innovation that's critical to driving all of that. And again, very much agreement among economists on that specific issue. Economic research, and we review this in the report, also suggests that that kind of an unfettered market, there are challenges in the marketplace to creating innovation, and we talk about two of them specifically in the report. When a new business founder is bringing some new innovation to market, it's considering research and development on creating that innovation, they need to be cognizant of there are what economists would call knowledge spillovers. When I bring this new product, this new process to market, there's intellectual property protections, but folks are probably going to borrow from it, copy it, adapt it. So the economic benefit, the profit, the money to me as a private individual is probably smaller than the societal the benefit from this new innovation. And sometimes that can make me think twice if I'm going to invest a lot of R&D into creating a new innovation, but I'm not going to probably get the full bang for the buck in terms of monetary benefit. Economists suggest that helps create a disincentive for that research and development that's vital to innovation. The other thing is that we know that young startup firms generally have higher capital costs than young startup firms that are R&D reliant and that are bringing innovation into the economy have higher capital costs than other young startup firms that aren't so much bringing innovation in the economy, and certainly more than more established firms. And that has to do with when you're bringing new innovative things into the economy, you need to worry about that information. When a potential investor is coming to me, I can't lay out everything that I think I'm bringing to market, because again, some of that information may get out and somebody may steal my idea or take advantage of my idea. They're not able to give full information to potential lenders, to potential financiers, and for that reason, they do generally face higher capital costs. So there is there's a potential role for public policy in helping to induce research and development and the innovation that comes with it. Then the second question is, okay, there's a potential role, but does policy really help? Is there empirical research that shows that it does? And the answer is yes. And we review in the report a number of studies on a wide array of different federal and state innovations, R&D tax credits, the federal SBIR program, um, incubators and accelerators, which are often an important part of state level innovation and entrepreneurship programming, publicly funded venture capital. So when it's a modest part, when it's helping to draw in private, not if it's go it alone, but when it's a part of a broader effort to bring in private venture capital, those programs have shown success in terms of the viability of businesses that receive support, and the eventual exit and success of the business long term. So there's a theoretical role for public policy. There are empirical studies that show these programs, many of them work and have had success. So now let's turn and talk about Michigan. Where is Michigan as an innovation state? What are our strengths and weaknesses as an innovation state? The report looks at two very prominent innovation indexes that do just that. They look at how states compare to one another. And if we look at the broad results of both those studies, the Milken Institute puts out a regular survey. The latest one was in 2022. State New Economy, the latest survey in 2020. Michigan ranked 17th. Among the states. That seems pretty, on its face, pretty good. Above average, not in the top 10, but 17 seems better than 35 or 40. So not so bad. But when you dig down into the sub-indexes that are used in these broad indexes, we see a pattern that suggests where Michigan may have some weaknesses that could be addressed by policy. The strengths are R&D inputs. We have great private and public, our university system, lots of research and development in Michigan. We have a great technological workforce. In our engineers, we have a huge concentration of engineers in the state that matches up well with any state in the country. A lot of that comes out of our legacy as a manufacturing and particularly auto state. So we do have strengths, in that potential to innovate is strong in Michigan. But if we look at where our weaknesses lie, they're in areas that are probably concerning. In the Milken Institute, they call it risk capital, entrepreneurial infrastructure, and the state new economy, it's economic dynamism, new business creation and business churn, drawing early stage and venture capital into the state, our system of that entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem in the state. That's where we rank lower. So lots of potential to innovate, but not maybe generating the type of financing and new business startups that you would expect with all of the R&D and the workforce strengths that we do have in Michigan. This next slide is from a internal evaluation of Michigan Economic Development Corporation Innovation and Entrepreneurship Programs was paid for by the Michigan Department of Technology Management and Budget, and Guidehouse was the author of that study. This shows very much the same thing, and it's a busy chart, but the first three rows of this chart compare Michigan and six of our competitor states on R&D. The top line is higher education, university R&D. Second line is public university R&D. Third line is university R&D in the STEM field, science and engineering fields. There, Michigan's great. Green, that's good. That means we are on the top. We have an advantage over any of our states. Again, so that capacity for R&D, capacity to generate innovation is strong. But those last two lines tell of the other side of that story, and that is the amount of R&D expenditures per on the fourth row, university invention disclosure, on that bottom row, per startup formation. And there, our dark green turns to pink and yellow. We aren't doing as well as many of our neighboring states in terms of that bang for the buck on the R&D. Lots of R&D, but when it comes to generating end results in terms of inventions and startups, not not an advantage over our neighboring states. States most states, I would say, have programming designed to help that. Innovation and entrepreneurial, what we call I&E, innovation and entrepreneurship programs. And just quickly, what are those? What do we mean by that? Access to capital support, early stage financing, venture capital programs, business support programs. That would be technical supports, that would be validation research that helps potential business determine whether there's a market for the product that they're creating. Incubators and accelerators are all a general part of those business support programs. And then finally, recognizing that university R&D can be a prime incubator of innovation. There's university research commercialization programs designed to try to help take university-based research and move it into a commercialized product or process that is having positive impacts on the economy. We have all of those programs in Michigan. But we'll see when we look at other states, we compare less favorably in terms of the statewide investment in them. Here is a quick snapshot of Michigan's current public investment in those I&E programs. We have a current investment that's just shy of $16 million. Two things are important to note there. It's roughly half of what it was 10 years ago, and that's not inflation adjusted. That's in actual dollars. It's down about almost a half from where it was in 2014. We also took a small cut during the COVID era when we were doing a lot of budget cutting, thinking we were losing revenue. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but we have not even replaced that small cut that we made to these programs in 2020. So in Michigan, we do all those programs, but our state funding of those programs is half of what it was 10 years ago. What if we compare ourselves to some of our neighbors? This chart, want to try to be careful to explain what this is we take that state appropriations, state funding for those I&E programs, and we look at it because we want to normalize it. If I'm Indiana, they're about half the size of our economy. If I'm New York, it's probably at least double the size of Michigan's economy. So we try to say, how much are states investing in I&E programs per $1 million in their state GDP. So tries to take the size of the economy into account. When we look at that metric, we see Ohio and Indiana basically having about triple the spending effort than Michigan. Pennsylvania um, almost double the spending effort. New York is ahead of us. The only state that lags behind us of the 5 case study states that we looked at was Illinois. And I think if we'd gone back a couple of years, like to 2021, Illinois probably would have been ahead of us as well. They had a very major venture capital program that sort of leveled off in terms of new commitments. So these I&E programs, Michigan definitely trailing in state investment compared to many of our neighbors. Just one observation on that. What is driving that difference? A couple things. I think venture capital, early stage financing is one of them. We have less investment. We haven't made really major commitments in that area as a state for quite some time. Most of the other states have established programs. The other thing is what we review on this slide, particularly Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, those 3 states that are well above us have in place a long-term relationship with nonprofit public-private partnership providers that are the organizers, the coordinators, the glue of their entrepreneurial ecosystems. And if you look at the numbers there, these are the actual annual dollars in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. They're well above Michigan. Indiana, not way above Michigan in terms of absolute dollars, but again, Indiana is a much smaller economy, and it's that investment in those nonprofit partners that help drive the university innovation, that help drive early stage financing and link early stage businesses with those resources that are different in Michigan than those other states. The last part of the report basically says, well, we're behind other states in terms of our dollar investment and our spending effort. What could Michigan do if lawmakers want to boost investment? What are some options? What are some revenue streams that you could point to? And I'm going to run through this quickly because I know time is of the essence here. So I'm going to go through these slides kind of quickly. Bonding is definitely an option. The state has a track record with Clean Michigan Initiative, with our 21st Century Jobs Fund, and using bonding to launch new public policy initiatives. I would make one note is that Ohio's system, which may be the best funded of all of the case studies we looked at, has relied heavily on over $1 billion in bonding that goes back to 2005 and 2010. And interestingly, though they have $1.2 billion in bonding authority, they have not tapped it all because the programs that were funded by the bond revenue have generated some returns that could be plowed back into new commitments. So they still actually, almost 20 years later, still have some bonding authority that they have left untapped. So borrowing funds through bonding is an option. Another one-time option for revenue is our 21st Century Jobs Fund balance. The 21st Century Jobs Fund is our main economic development fund in Michigan. And if we look over the last 10 years, that fund, it basically each year it receives about $75 million in Michigan tobacco settlement revenue that largely gets spent, but we have a consistent fund balance, money in the bank effectively for this fund of around $250 to $300 million. That's one-time resources that if you wanted a major one-time influx of funding for I&E programs could be drawn upon to do that. If you're looking for ongoing funding, what if we wanted to just maybe double the size of our current annual investment in I&E programs. Another option is comes out of the grand bargain in 2014 when Detroit was entering bankruptcy. The state and philanthropic foundations in the Metro Detroit area, private donors in the Metro Detroit area, all teamed together to generate about $800 million to help mitigate what would have been pension cuts for Detroit retirees, which could have meant the loss of Detroit Institute of Art, uh, art assets. The state and these donors teamed together. The state's contribution to that grand bargain came from our rainy day fund, our budget stabilization fund, the BSF. When we made that $195 million contribution from our rainy day fund, we said we're going to pay it back though. So we committed $17.5 million in tobacco settlement funds to pay back our rainy day fund over, and that commitment in statute is over a 21-year period that extends into the 2030s. Separate from that, and afterwards, the state has done a great job to the credit of Republicans and Democrats, both. Schneider administration, Whitmer administration made consistent efforts separately to replenish the rainy day fund. And in fact, we've done so well. We've added $1.7 billion. We've paid back the rainy day fund now on discretionary contributions 4 times over from that initial grand bargain pledge. So in effect, that grand bargain repayment pledge is kind of symbolic now. And if you wanted to redirect that $17.5 million to something else like I&E programs, you could do so. And no, we already have as healthy a rainy day fund as we've had in our history, really, as a state. Tribal gaming revenue is another source of new revenue. The Michigan Strategic Fund gets 10% of that revenue that comes from tribal sites, and that has generated about $17 to $18 million in extra revenue for the MSF annually since about 2022 when those funds started coming online. And then the current, a very major current point of deliberation, back when the state passed a major tax law change that restructured the way we treat retirement income, that boosted our state's earned income tax credit. We also did something else. We redirected some corporate income tax revenue, $550 million to our big business attraction fund, the SOAR fund that you may hear about that tries to bring new businesses to Michigan, and also a placemaking program. Those all expire. Those earmarks expire at the end of fiscal year 2025. So when next February's budget comes, without any new legislation, that money would come back to the general fund and be available for anything. There's current legislation introduced that's designed to maintain that earmark, but decide where does it go? Does it Democrats in the legislature have suggested big transformational public transit programs. We just had a major announcement about redirecting that funding to roads from House Republican leadership. There's no reason why, if we maintain this earmark, that some of it couldn't go to I&E programs to help provide a permanent boost to income there. And then finally, on the horizon, legislation is pending, and the budget appropriation is already passed and enacted. $60 million in one-time money to a new Michigan Innovation Fund that would support exactly the type of innovation and entrepreneurship programs that we talk about in this report. That $60 million is in the 2025 budget. It's important to note this isn't general fund. This isn't state tax revenue. It's actually revenue that was earned by our legacy venture capital initiative, the Venture Michigan Fund, which was developed in the early 2000s. And over time, the state, for budget reasons, decided to suspend any new commitments under that big program. But with time, We've had successes in the program, and we're able to have some hits, have some business startups that generated big money back into the Venture Michigan Fund. It's that money that will go to fund the Michigan Innovation Fund. In all likelihood, there's at least another 60 or $70 million that probably will be available for appropriation down the road. That's good news, but it is a limited term boost. It's not a permanent boost in funding. And legislation is pending now to dictate how that money will be spent and distributed, but it will have a focus on some of our nonprofit and university-based organizations. So again, there are some opportunities for new investment that we identify in the report. The Michigan Innovation Fund is a good start. So in summary, the big takeaways from our research: economic innovation is critical to our long run growth. There's very much agreement among economists for that. Public policy interventions can work and can help enhance R&D and innovation in the economy. Right now, at the state level, Michigan is investing less than its neighbors when we adjust for the size of the economy. And again, as we just reviewed, the report does identify some one-time and ongoing support for those efforts. So I'm going to stop there. Arnold, you can let me know how much time we have for questions. I know we have the panel coming up, but thank you all for listening. And if there's time, I'll take some questions.
Thanks, Bob. If you could stop sharing your screen at this point, that'd be
Yes, yes.
appreciated. I didn't see any questions in the chat or amongst the participants right now. So we might just be able to move right into our moderated discussion. If no one has any questions, that's fine. We can hold them till after the moderated discussion. Now I would like to introduce our panel. And starting with Lisa Katz. Lisa is currently president and CEO of The Mix, and is a staunch and proven advocate for Michigan's innovation ecosystem, currently focused on advancing policy, education, and storytelling to attract and retain strategic startups, advance emerging technology clusters, and grow investment in Michigan. Previously, she oversaw strategy and investments related to economic vitality and entrepreneurship in the Detroit region for the William Davidson Foundation. And earlier in her career, Lisa was the first executive director of a multi-stakeholder nonprofit partnership, the Workforce Intelligence Network, which worked to align economic and workforce development in Southeast Michigan. Joining Lisa will be Jeff Wesley, who is Executive Director of Red Cedar Ventures at the MSU Research Foundation. Red Cedar Ventures is the venture investment subsidiary of the MSU Foundation, where Jeff actively manages and grows the company's venture investment portfolio. And finally, Harrison Leffel-Jones of the Lansing Economic Area Partnership, where he serves as the Vice President of Small Business and Innovation. In that role, Harrison focuses on delivering and coordinating services to help small business grow within the region. Thanks to the three of them for joining us. And Lisa, I'll let you take it away.
Great. And I want to just thank you, Bob, and the Citizens Research Council team for doing an amazing job on this research and really calling attention to the opportunities that we have to drive and support innovation and entrepreneurship differently here in Michigan. And also to you, Arnold, and the IPPSR team for making this forum possible so that we can have these important conversations and really think about what can we be doing differently to grow jobs and opportunity here in Michigan. So I'm going to just jump right in with Harrison and Jeff, and I'm sure everyone has been processing all of the information that Bob shared, but they get to weigh in. And the question, and Jeff, why don't you take the first stab at this? Is, wow, that's a lot of work, a lot of information. What really stood out to you? What surprised you? That's kind of sticking in your brain right now?
Yeah, there's not a lot that surprised me in the report. I was actually more appreciative to see the report because I think anything that advances entrepreneurship and innovation is really critical at this time. Being one that loves the state, one that's grown businesses in the state, and now supports new entrepreneurs. I just think we're at a very important point for the state. We've when you look at the numbers, there's so much positive momentum in the state. We've gone through COVID, we've gone through economic conditions that are challenging, we've gone through a venture time that's challenging, yet we're performing. We're seeing metrics, we're seeing success, we're seeing new collaborations in the state where people are working together more than they ever have. We're at the forefront of some exciting technologies in AI and therapeutics and robotics. I think it's just a great time to have the discussion. I think it's a great time to look at how do we lean into this and how do we put more investment in for the benefit of Michigan and even the Great Lakes region as we look to do more together. So
How about you, Harrison?
Yeah, I'd echo everything that Jeff has mentioned and really appreciate the report. As listening today and also reading the report ahead of our conversation, one of the things that really sticks out to me, especially from a LEAP perspective, is we're working with first-time founders all the way through to Fortune 500. And so we often talk in discussions of how do we right the pendulum of economic development in the state of Michigan, where it seems to sometimes wildly swing to we're going to invest only in large scale businesses and then oh wait, now we have to do innovation and entrepreneurship. And how do we ensure that as we look towards fiscal policy moving forward, we can really focus on doing a both and approach. It's great that we have SOAR and we can land these massive projects, but we see a ton of great value from our small mom and pops, our entrepreneurs, and our high tech, high growth companies. And I really want to make sure that as we're working with companies in 2024, that those companies are prepared for this next decade of growth and opportunity. As Jeff said, we're starting and we're riding that wave, and it's a great time to be involved. I just would hate to see some of our companies end up sitting on the sidelines and not riding this wave of innovation and technology that's happening right now, and really preparing them for the future.
So I think this report, obviously it focuses on policy, and we've had similar conversations to this in Detroit and in Grand Rapids. Inevitably, you'll talk to different cohorts of folks, and they'll be like, great. So government is saying, we're here, we're trying to help, right? And people get a little bit queasy when they talk about maybe there's more of a role for government. You all are doing really important work on the ground. Harrison, you mentioned corporates, you mentioned startups. Whose job is innovation? Who should be involved? What is the role of government? Do you want to take that one on?
Sure. I'll give it my best go, and I'd love to hear Jeff's approach to this as well. From a LEAP perspective and a local economic development organization and entrepreneur support organization, the role of government from our perspective is really how do we continue to provide kindling to the fire that's already going, right? So how do we come alongside a startup or an entrepreneur that's just getting going or hitting that next roadblock of scaling and making sure that we can continue to incentivize that growth in a really healthy and positive way. And we can't do that by ourselves, right? A lot of the funds that we're working with are really small dollar amounts, particularly compared to how much it takes to get a startup off the ground, which is why we love working with the folks at the MSU Research Foundation and others in the ecosystem to make sure that we can incentivize that growth. So, when a lot of times when a company comes to us, from my perspective, it's saying, okay, yes, you've got a great concept. Yes, we can take this somewhere, but how are you driving this via the private sector first and foremost? And then we can help you get there faster is really our goal by eliminating some of those barriers or infrastructure problems that might keep you from getting there as fast as you want to. So that's really our approach is how do we come alongside a company rather than leading on that innovation, particularly because we just don't have the funds to really fuel that beyond a certain level.
Jeff, what's your response?
I'm going to go back to, I think something Bob said. He said the report is about facts and independence. So I'm going to start out with the big facts. I think innovation is critical for everybody. I think diversifying the economy in Michigan is critical for everybody. I think talent and growing our population is critical for everybody. So there's a lot of reasons to align around innovation. I really think there's a role for everybody to play here. And who is not for driving research? Who's not for commercialization, new technologies? Who's not for startups and keeping our population here? Who's not for economic development and job creation? So I think there's really a role for everybody to play. I think government is critical, working with universities. We have great universities here with growing research budgets. I think the key is going to be the collaborations and how these collaborations leverage federal opportunities and bigger opportunities to bring more dollars back to Michigan to catalyze even more pace of change for us. I think the winners going forward are going to be the ones that do invest and build sustainable models and continue to challenge best practices. And how do we evolve this so we all win? And resources matter. I don't think there's anything in life when you say the facts and this is important. It can't get done without good people and good resources coming together. And my hope is this report will spur those conversations, and working with Harrison and other people around the state. I'm just really excited if we can look at this and say this is going to be a priority for all of us and we're willing to push it forward.
So I know everybody doesn't think about, policy all day long, like some of us. However, I know, Jeff, you've been involved in some really important policy discussions. And as you reflect on those lanes, right? Like what is a wish list, or what are some of the things that you wish were happening that we don't see yet, or we haven't seen yet, or maybe are in the works that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, first I'm going to go back. I just really appreciate everybody that's come before us to really get the momentum going on this and getting through some rough years with COVID and everything. What inspires me right now is just people working together. This new Michigan Innovation Fund is exciting, but it's only a piece of the puzzle. The collaborations of everybody coming together. But we have to think longer term. We can't move from budget cycle to budget cycle. We have to have a strategy. Sometimes it's hard to say you need to move forward, but look at the other states. They're investing more. They're seeing the opportunities. We're seeing the opportunities here. So to me, it's how do you draw into those best practices? How do you get this Michigan Innovation Fund over the finish line? Start looking at other opportunities in terms of collaborations. The new R&D credit, I think, is very important to being in the corporate world before for many years. So I think you stack these things up, it's going to take more, and there's no magic piece to this puzzle. But I think if we continue to look at a long-term strategy together and fund it, we'll find out those pieces that are the winning formula for all of us.
Harrison, what thoughts do you have there?
Yeah, sure. I'd agree with everything that Jeff said. And, one of the things that has really been a focus for myself and a lot of the other smart zones around the state of Michigan is, how do we look at the next generation of where we want to go? And, I think from my previous role at London and Partners, representing the mayor of London's office, right? The city of London is 10 million people. The state of Michigan is also 10 million people, right? So if we want to think globally from a competitive aspect, how do we make sure that it's not Grand Rapids versus Detroit versus Lansing versus Traverse City? It's all of us rowing the boat together. And so both from a policy perspective, that long-term view of innovation and investing in that innovation, but also from a cultural perspective, I would agree with Jeff that, there's even in the last 2.5 years since I've joined the team at LEAP, the collaboration amongst the different partners and the different smart zones around the state of Michigan has greatly increased, and viewing it as all of our boats are rising together rather than, oh, well, if a company is growing in Grand Rapids, it's a loss for us here in Lansing. And so that is both from a cultural perspective, but then a policy perspective of making sure we're setting key performance indicators for the entire state that doesn't incentivize us to go back to our regional hubs, right? And view ourselves more as one collective state of Michigan that's growing together. So from a policy perspective, that's definitely something we continue to advocate for, is how do we make sure that our metrics align with a one team policy rather than 27 different smaller regions fighting amongst each other for the future of the state.
So you both talked a lot about, this is a team sport, right? Everybody needs to be involved in innovation. And please don't you fact check me away, but I recall that there are 26 billionaires in Michigan. We have pension funds, we have insurance funds that insurance companies invest. We have wealthy individuals who have been angel investors. What are some of the things we could look at to unlock some of that wealth and really get it into the mix, get it into our innovation ecosystem? Things that might incentivize like tax credits or things like that. Are those viable considerations for policy that we should be looking at?
Yes, I think we're seeing that today with efforts in Detroit and what Dan Gilbert is doing down there, and you're seeing it in Grand Rapids with some great family legacies there, and so you're seeing that around the state. So I think there is a place for that. But that's where I come back to a bigger strategy that involves corporations, that involves universities with growing research, that involves the state, that leverages great ecosystems. I think it's once you get those folks aligned around how do you cluster resources, how do you cluster the strategies together, and create opportunities that we can do together, I think it increases the chances we can compete on a national level and actually move this faster than we could individually in any region or by any person. So I think that's happening, but again, I think you got to build on the momentum. You got to say this is important. You got to invest in it, and you got to spend more time on it. This isn't going to happen naturally. We got to really build a culture in Michigan where people wake up every day and get excited about innovation, and I think that's going to keep our young people here. Right now, we have companies that are leaving the state. Right now, we have companies that come to us that want to come to the state every day. We just got to have more resources to fight on both sides to keep them here and build even more critical mass. And I think that comes through some of the things you're talking about working with the private sector and bringing them into the mix even more than we are today.
Anything you want to add, Harrison?
Yeah, I think just on top of that, really a focus for us as well is, as Jeff mentioned, not only focusing on, our wealthy investors and the community and investing on all of those sides, but also how do we make sure that, and this is something I have to remind myself all the time, not to gatekeep and say like, oh, well, it has to come through an economic development organization or an ESO, but how do we facilitate some of those relationships where, wealthy individuals are getting involved with our local school programs and incentivizing really great tech-based programming for our K-12 programs. And when we look at best practices around the country, there's amazing things that can happen completely separate of anything policy or economic development related. And I think that that's another key aspect of how do we incentivize even through conversations and showing people, hey, if you're a wealthy individual or a corporation in your community and you're looking for highly qualified tech talent, you can get directly involved with your local schools to build that talent yourself. And it doesn't necessarily have to come through the kind of formalized channels. And I think more of that will continue to incentivize really cool programs throughout the state of Michigan.
And I think to Harrison's point too, I think there's an aspect too of it just on the culture and communication and marketing side. Both of us live and breathe this stuff every day. So we can see things, we can see trend lines, we can see hardworking entrepreneurs that are going to be successful and create new industries in Michigan. I don't think other people see it as much. And I think that's an area that we are probably accountable a little bit too. We're working so hard with the entrepreneurs. We got to get the stories out there. And I think that helps connect the dots a lot more than they are today. Because I think some of the things we're probably saying would surprise some people, and they should. There's some great things happening in this state.
I mean, I have that benefit too of visiting a lot of different places. And I mean, kudos to the Lansing folks. There are some mind-bending technologies, and innovation isn't just tech, right? It can be growth, it can be a lot of things, but I'm always blown away by what I see when I visit some of these different communities. I agree, storytelling, and that came up a lot in some of our other geographies as well. One of the other things that I really appreciate about the conversation around innovation and entrepreneurship is when you look at the boards, for example, of entrepreneurial organizations, they really their diversity metrics are impressive compared to what we might see in the corporate setting. And similarly, when you look at their executive leadership teams, that's one way of thinking about inclusion, right? At the same time, Harrison, I think you're the one who mentioned, like, we have smart zones all around the state, right? Urban, rural. So what does an inclusive innovation agenda look like? And I'll add one more little thread to that. I mean, a lot of times when people think about, the entrepreneurs, they think about software, they think about, all things happening in California, but we're a hardware state, right? So as we think about the types of industries where we see innovation, where we talk about the geography, we think about the individual people, how does that manifest in a truly inclusive entrepreneurship agenda in Michigan?
Yeah. Harrison, you want to go first? You want me to?
No, jump right in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it is very important to us, and I'm to our fellow ecosystem partners. I think our metrics are great when it comes to inclusion and diversity in people and leadership and geography. When you look at it, I think we're better served. It helps our innovations to be successful by the inclusion. It helps to bring different perspectives. Personally, I believe it helps to make the innovation potentially more successful through that inclusion to have a bigger impact in today's society. I also believe just the entrepreneurial mindset is important for everybody. And the more we put that across the state and with our young, talented individuals, I think there's a great excitement around new technologies. There's a greater opportunity for them to be successful. And I think as a state, we're going to be more successful. I do think we need to lean in at times. I do think training is important. We have a lot of internship programs around diversity, and it helps people to get an experience they might not otherwise get. When we think of investments in the UP, we think about how do we help them in a different way than maybe somebody in Detroit that's got more resources. So there is some management and intentionality to this, but I think at the end of the day, we want to see success, and I think it's good for everybody.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I think, in my role at LEAP, I have the privilege of overseeing both our Smart Zone programming, but then also our Small Business Support Hub programming, which is a program funded through the MEDC and the federal government. And what a key focus for myself and our team generally is, I think a lot of times it's painting the picture of what innovation could mean for a lot of our businesses. I think many times our Main Street mom and pop service-based businesses kind of count themselves out of the innovation economy without realizing that, hey, you're really great at this thing, and with a little additional training or potentially bringing alongside some great talent from our universities, you could scale this from one location to 50 locations, right? And so that is a real focus for us, is, again, not just looking at the diversity of the founders who are leading there and the teams, but then also where are the sources of innovation, right? Is it spinouts from our corporate partners? Is it university spinouts? Is it, folks who are coming right out of high school and saying, hey, a traditional career path is not for me, but I've got a great concept for a business and I want to scale that, to be a nationwide brand. So the diversity for us is really important. And that's where we're seeing, honestly, some of our best success cases are the companies that are like, hey, I've figured out my niche product that solves a massive issue, and they didn't even know that any of this existed. So, going back to some of the previous conversations, how do we make, what Jeff and I do on a day-to-day basis? Sometimes it's easy to get, kind of down in the weeds of working with these entrepreneurs, but how do we go back up to a 30,000-foot view and make sure that folks just down the road from us are aware of the support services that are there for them? And that's what makes me really excited, is every day we've got more people coming to our door and to Jeff's door, I'm sure, that are, have no idea about any of this and have great concepts for businesses that are going to change the world, which is really exciting.
No, that's awesome. I think people forget that, Starbucks, it's coffee, right? It's coffee. And yet here it is. It's a global phenomenon. If we think big, you never know, where the next Main Street business can go. So With that, I mean, I know you talked, I wanted to talk a little bit about talent. I think you both addressed it. And I understand from Arnold that we have at least one question from the audience. So I want to give that question or questions a chance.
Yep.
And then we can see where we go.
Thanks, Lisa. And thanks again to Harrison and Jeff for your perspective. Greatly appreciate it. And I'm going to unmute Bob here as well to join us in this question. It comes from an attendee who asks about the Mackinac Center and a report that they've issued that shows that promised jobs and state-assisted development projects largely do not happen. How do we juxtapose that against what I hear in this forum about the need for state support in creating an innovation economy and ecosystem? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I can start unless someone else wants to. So I think the Mackinac Center report, which I did see, is kind of pointing at, I would say it's more pointing at those business attraction, the SOAR fund type of, $500 million to automaker for a battery plant or what have you around the state, and that we have the track record has not been stellar in that, and that we do hear about jobs that maybe don't fully come to fruition. And of course, we have a lot of local concerns about, hey, maybe do we want a battery plant here? So this is, I would point that the innovation and entrepreneurship programs that we referenced are actually a very small little subsection of that broader MEDC, Michigan Strategic Fund budget that tends to be dominated by that other stuff, by the business attraction and programs. How do we get big businesses and lots of jobs to come to Michigan? I understand politically why, and I'd like to have, we're going to have a restructured auto industry. Auto employment has a big footprint in Michigan. We kind of need to retain some of those types of jobs in Michigan for sure. But what we're talking about today is a different component of economic development that I think holds the promise of generating high pay jobs in innovative sectors of the economy, and that hopefully can have ripple effects and have much greater, broader impacts on the economy as well. So I would say what the Mackinac Center was talking about is kind of the other side of the economic development programming in Michigan, and I think our report helps to show that the I&E innovation entrepreneurship side has probably gotten the short end of the stick for a long time.
Jeff,
Yeah.
Harrison, any further comments?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree, and I think when you look at best practices around the country, it reinforces investment in this area. When you look at our metrics, it reinforces that. I think there's some perspectives to understand when it comes to new technologies. Somebody has to play that role of de-risking and taking on the mentorship of these coveted opportunities that are going to bring new jobs down the road. But they need the support of SBIR and STTR grants, and they need the support of universities. They need some support from the state because the private sector isn't going to jump into this space readily without some of that mentoring and de-risking. So I've been in the public sector, I've been in the private sector, and I think what we do every day plays a critical role, whether it's our group or another group in the state. And when I think about the long-term benefit of Michigan, if I want my daughters to stay here, I want talent to stay here, I want new companies to spur up to be the next pharmaceutical company in Michigan or the next high-tech energy company to solve some of the problems we have. I want to be part of that. And I think if you want to be part of something, you have to be engaged in leading it. And I don't think it's time to sit on the sidelines when it comes to this, what we're talking about today.
Harrison?
Yeah, I would just add on to that. We talk a lot about economic gardening, right? And the amount of investment that we put into these smaller businesses and have a much longer standing effect because those roots go a lot deeper. And so we talk internally at the office of, is it better to have, one company come in with 1,000 jobs, or are you going to do a bunch of small businesses that are going to potentially add up to 1,000 jobs, but you get there in a much different way? And I think our team would really advocate for the fact that the investment that you're going to make in those smaller businesses, although risky, has a much higher return on investment in terms of long-term staying power, especially if you engage with those companies over that entire period. So we often talk about company retention. I think a better way to phrase this, and I'll steal a phrase from Tom Stewart from the Research Foundation team, is company engagement, right? Is how do we engage with these companies and make sure that they have a trusted partner in the state of Michigan in their local entrepreneur support organization. And I think we're really starting to see that the return on those dollars, although it's that very small percentage compared to the massive SOAR fund, I think can really show a long-term lasting effect. I mean, 99% of businesses in the state of Michigan are deemed small businesses. And so I think that we just need to continue to keep our eye on the ball. And again, that pendulum swing of making sure that our economic development policy, yes, can serve large corporates here in the state of Michigan and engage them to maintain their growth, but also making sure that we have the next 2, 3, 4 generations of small businesses that are coming up behind them who could be the next GM, Ford, insert large corporation name.
I think that
I'd like to eliminate that term long-term of flyover state. And I think we have made tremendous momentum to get more venture capital here. If you look at the multiples on the dollars we're investing in what's coming here, you see the collaborations in the Great Lakes region that are happening now. And we have more people that are calling us that want to see our innovations here. To me, that's where if you don't double down, you're going to fall behind even further from the regional Great Lakes states. And I think, like I said, to start this thing, when you look at the facts, I think this is a space that we can all agree to that supports a lot of goals for this state. So
great closing statements. Thank you all. Thank you, Lisa, Jeff, and Harrison, for all the work that you do on the ground to spur on an innovation economy. And thanks as well, of course, to Bob Schneider, Eric Lufer, and the folks at the Citizens Research Council for continuing to bring such issues to light and creating a place for discussion and debate amongst the general public and policymakers. And I want to thank everyone who attended today's forum. We have been recording, and it will be posted on our IPPSR website, and I believe also on the CRC website in the near future. Thank you again from the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research. Happy holidays to all, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Take care, everyone.